Hello, ladies and gents, Hagbard Celine here. I'm going to keep this intro brief. It's basically just a breakdown from a very, very popular and apparently well-respected Islamic scholar, and I'm going to call it my warning to Europe. It's not about the race of these people, it's not about their religion per se, it's about the ideology that their religion brings with them. So I'm just going to offer here a few brief examples of why you should perhaps be somewhat weary of these people. I hope you enjoy. Here we go. Oh, and I'd like to apologize for both the accents and the audio. Neither is my fault, and I'm doing my best to mediate it.
Question is from a non-Muslim sister. She's present in the audience, but for security reasons, she will not like to come on the microphone. Yes. I'll be reading a question.
Welcome.
If a non-Muslim girl wants to marry a Muslim boy, and the Muslim boy asks the girl to convert, not by force, but because he wishes her to accept the religion, is it wrong? Meaning...
Well, I'm going to preempt you right there and say, no, he's not going to say that's wrong. I think he's going to say quite the opposite, dear.
Is it wrong on the part of the boy to ask to convert? Secondly, if a non-Muslim girl marries a Muslim boy without converting, but still follows the Islamic religion as it is supposed to be followed, is it wrong on the part of the girl to follow the religion but without converting? Her name is Khushbu. She's a teacher by profession.
Sister asked a question, that the non-Muslim asked a question, that can a non-Muslim girl, if he wants to marry a Muslim boy and the Muslim boy requests her to accept Islam, is it right? And if a non-Muslim girl follows Islam without converting, is it acceptable?
In short, the first is mandatory. The second is not really in existence as far as this guy is concerned. Let's watch.
The Quran says in Surah Baqarah, chapter number 2, verse number 221, that do not marry unbelieving women.
Nope.
Until they believe. Do not marry a mushrika until they believe. Because it further says that it is preferable to marry a believing woman even if she is a bondwoman. Even if she may be a servant, even if she may be ugly, it is far superior to marry a believing woman who's a bondwoman rather than an unbelieving woman, even if she attracts you.
So basically, even if she is a slave, it's preferable to marry a believing woman than it is to marry a non-believing woman. That's the basis of this. But let's see. I mean, he doesn't mind as long as they convert.
She may be the most beautiful woman, she may be a beauty queen, she may be the wealthiest woman, but a believing woman is far superior. So in terms of, is it right for a Muslim man to ask the non-Muslim woman to convert before marrying? It is not right, it is a must.
Yup. It is a must, ladies and gentlemen.
Without she accepting Islam, he cannot marry her. Coming to a second question. That, why I'll tell you. For example, if I tell you that there is a car, one tire is of a cycle and the other is of a tractor, will the car run? No. All the tires will either be of a bicycle, you'll have a handcart at least.
So basically what you're telling me is you're demanding homogeny. Okay.
Or of a tractor, you'll have a proper tractor. Because when you're leading a life, the views and philosophies, the major thing, the goal of Jannah should be same. Coming to your second question, that if...
Well, you heard them all non-Muslims out there. Don't marry a Muslim. I mean, don't do it. Unless you're willing to convert to Islam, don't do it.
A woman follows the teachings of Islam but does not convert. Is it acceptable? See, for conversion, you don't have to publicly announce. You don't have to come on the microphone and say, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. It's not a must. If you feel your life is in danger, if you say within your hearts and tell it to Almighty God, you don't even require any witness.
See, this is why I have a little bit more respect for Christians. They've actually been taught to stand up and say that my God is my only God and Jesus is the Savior, even if their life is in danger. I mean, that's belief. You guys are taught to hide if your life is in danger. That's downright cowardly.
It's between you and Allah. So there is no particular ceremony that is required. But proclaiming is preferable so that the people in the world don't misunderstand you. But if you feel
Namely other Muslims, I would imagine.
Life is in danger if you proclaim to Allah only and keep it in your heart and follow. Alhamdulillah, following is more important than proclaiming. It is preferable for the lady not to mention but yet follow Islam than to mention she has converted and not follow Islam.
So basically, even if you have to become a secret Muslim to marry a Muslim, go ahead and do it. Now we're going to get on to an even more exciting one. I'm going to skip forward to 430. Let's see how Muslims feel about the Jews, shall we?
And you're calling them terrorists. So what they have to do is, let's get together and solve this problem. Whatever the problem is. Today, America is controlled by the Jews. Whether it be the banks, whether it be the money, whether it be the power. According to the American survey, no one can become a president of USA without walking the Star of David.
Yeah, that's how they read that, ladies and gents. Keep that in mind.
The Jews are a minority, less than 5% in America. But they're controlling the economy, they're controlling America. Fine? So if they're controlling America, let all of this, let's solve the problem of Palestine, let's solve the American problem. Not forever. Few years. 4 or 5 years only. And the problem is solved. So we aren't telling that the Muslims should fight with the Jews. In fact, the Quran says, even if your enemy wants peace, several places, even if they come to fight you, it's mentioned in Surah Anfal, in the battle, if they want peace, give it to them.
Well, that's interesting because Palestine has turned down like 6 or 7 peace accords, and then they are the ones going out and attacking random Jewish people in Israel and getting killed and then crying wolf. But okay, let's see what else you think.
So Quran is always for peace.
Is it?
Quran is always encouraging them. But if a person does not want peace to prevail, what can we do? Islam is a religion of
Good question. I'm kind of trying to figure that out about Muslims personally.
peace. It wants peace, but it even mentions facts.
Oh, facts.
That means we have to be careful of the Jews.
These people call people like me Nazis, mind you. These people who say shit like that about the Jews and whose governments tended to work with Nazi Germany. Okay, moving right along.
Both last.
Just last, yeah.
Last of the last.
Here's
Just
a
last.
homosexuality.
Last of the last, yes. Recently in India, it was in the news that same-sex marriages got allowed, yeah?
Yeah.
And on reading upon it, yeah, I found out that they said that it is at the genetic level of people. It's in the hormones, yeah, what they desire, what they don't desire. Now, I understand that Islam is completely against this. It doesn't allow this. But what I'm saying is, if
Of course, it's evil and it doesn't produce multiple babies to go to war, so you know.
someone's got that at a genetic level, yeah, and it's his choice,
Very good question.
and he was born with that kind of tendency, and yet Islam chooses to punish him
Then
on
who's to blame?
something that he was born with.
I agree with you.
So God
It
should,
sounds illogical.
yeah, so God made him like that, and God is punishing him for that as well.
Never trust an apologist when they try that judo shit. As soon as he started saying, oh yeah, I totally agree, he's already locked and loaded with some bullshit.
I was asked a question that recently in India homosexuality has been permitted, not permitted, but the law says it's not a big crime that was there in the Indian constitution.
Yeah.
They have softened it, not permitted yet.
Yes.
It is a court case that took place in Delhi.
Okay, so India basically what? Decriminalized homosexuality? It's not necessarily like okay per se, so like some cities and states have done with marijuana. Okay.
It's not a law yet.
Yes.
There's a hue and cry yet. There are many organizations fighting against it. So it's not a law. It's a law in Canada, in USA, in UK, not in India yet.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And today, there are some scientific research that say that homosexuality is genetic.
Yes. Yes.
So Veda asks the question, if homosexuality is genetic, then who's to blame? How can you consider it to be a sin? Very good question.
Yes.
Yes, regardless of whether it's genetic, if it is a naturally occurring phenomenon that is trans-species, as in we have found studies of other species that, have homosexual acts within that species at about the same rate that we do in human beings. So it's naturally occurring, which means that you would have to say that Allah made about 10% of the population homosexual so you could kill them.
This research was done earlier, a few years back, and later on, what was found out that this is totally false. And the person who propounded this himself was homosexual.
Ah,
Okay.
So there's no scientific proof yet. It's
there you go. Because the guy that made it was a homosexual, you clearly can't trust that source, right?
an assumption.
Right.
Science doesn't testify yet that homosexuality is genetic.
Right.
In fact, Quran
And just keep holding on to that, because if we find any sort of naturally occurring thing that tends towards homosexuality, you guys are fucked.
says in Surah Araf, chapter number 7, verse number 81, which says that do you have lust for men more in preference to women? To homosexuality. Talking about Qawm Lut.
Yes.
It is prohibited in the Bible also, talking about Lut alayhi salam.
Yes.
Also in the Quran it is prohibited.
Yes.
Homosexuality is prohibited completely.
Right.
It is an assumption that it's genetic. It's not genetic at all. How does it happen? I'll tell you.
Yeah.
The psychologists they tell us that once you overdo a thing, you start losing the pleasure.
Now is when he starts shifting the blame randomly. This whole rest of this video is quite entertaining to watch as a thinking individual, because first he tries to say that it's basically an off product of hedonism, as in most homosexuals had gone out and just had so much just fucking, you know, vanilla dick and pussy sex that they just got bored with it eventually. And then they just had to go after that sweet, sweet mangina.
Right.
So what God has permitted the normal sexual way of life, you start overdoing it. You start doing unnatural things.
Right.
Yeah, like causing your females to have orgasms. That's why we gotta cut their clits off.
What God has permitted natural things, you do unnatural. You start doing from the reverse side. So once you get fed up of doing it so often, that's the reason scientific research says a person who has no extramarital affairs enjoys the sexual life with his wife and husband the maximum.
Yeah, that's because they have no experience outside of the boudoir with their significant other. That's not what we're even discussing here. You're saying that that causes homosexuality? That's insane. The idea that you have had sex with just so many women you got bored with it. Oh, come on now.
Yeah, but this tendency is found in small children. I mean, you know.
telling you.
Yeah. So I mean, they have not got married yet or
Let me-
tasted it.
Let me complete.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll come to children later on. First I'm talking about the adults.
Yes.
I really wish he would have stuck to English.
How it comes in children, I'll tell you it.
Okay.
Sure, go
What
ahead.
happens that once you start overdoing it, you want to enjoy more. So that thing what is normal doesn't excite you any longer. Then you start doing unnatural things. It's not genetic.
Uh-huh.
Talking about children.
Yeah.
How does children come? It doesn't just come out from birth. It's not from birth.
Yeah.
Because
You know, I know quite a few homosexuals that would like to have a very long sit down with you.
they watch pornographic movies.
Right.
They watch blue films.
Yes, that's right. He is saying that the reason why homosexuality exists is children are exposed to pornography.
It's haram. The parents, the way they behave in front of the children. All this has a
Yes, the parents that are just rampantly fucking in front of their kids, right?
psychological impact on the child.
Right.
Don't tell a person who's born, then he starts becoming homosexual. It's not like that at all. It's a
Right.
misconception.
Right.
Scientific research doesn't say that.
Right. 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 Okay.
It is because of the overexposure. Not
He just makes constant assertions as refutations. He does that throughout every video I've seen with him. I mean, you can find him simply by Googling this dumb fuck. And you can find all of these videos quite simply. Now, the other thing I think is interesting is how much of this is sexocentric. It is so obsessed with sex and sexuality and the expression therein. And almost in all of the scenarios, it's well more concerned with the idea of males getting the sexual power. It's very quite interesting to see. He never says, if you noticed in the marriage one, a Muslim woman can marry or cannot marry a non-Muslim man. You see, it's always the other way around, because it's just presumed that Muslim women are going to get sold off to the highest bidder or given to a first cousin. Don't worry, we'll get to the first cousin thing in a minute.
children watch the blue films,
Yeah.
the channels, free to air.
Sure,
You know,
sure
there
they
are more
do.
pornographic channels than other channels.
Yeah.
Very good money. So because of the media, that's how when they see on the channel, they start emulating, and that's how they divert. Who's to blame? The channel.
Right.
Why
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Media makes people homosexual. We've gone back almost 100 years now, and we're making this argument again. And be prepared to start having it in the West. The other reason I'm doing this is, note they're all in English.
Alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I have read in Quran in Surah Nisa that penalty of Zani should be 40 lashes. Where it is written in the Quran that the death penalty should be given to rapist.
Sister said that she has read that the Quran.
Yeah, this is my favorite of the bunch, to be really honest with you, because he is just overwhelmingly honest here. This is not an attempt at apologetics. This is preaching.
Quran says that a Zani should be given 40 lashes. Where is it mentioned in the Quran that death penalty is given? Sister referring to the verse of the Quran of Surah Nur, chapter number 24, verse number 2, which says that as for the fornicator,
Oh, okay. Let's just remove those two. There is technically a difference in the Quran, but he's not going to defend, or he's not going to deny the punishments. He's going to defend them.
the difference is that in Arabic zina is there. In English, there is fornication, adultery. Fornication means having sexual intercourse outside a marriage bond before a person is married. An unmarried man having sexual intercourse with a person who is not the legal wife or husband.
See? An unmarried man. It's always about a man having sex with someone, because in their communities, women have no concept of sexual agency. It's brilliant.
In adultery, a person who is married, whether man or woman, has a sexual intercourse with the person who is not the husband or wife. So the case for fornication is, before marriage, according to the Quran, is 100 lashes.
Okay, that's reasonable.
And there's another verse in the Quran, in Surah Nisa chapter 4, I think it's verse number 15.
Oh shit.
That
You see, now he's going to differentiate. We're going to move on from the fornication line, which was frankly bad enough. 100 lashes for fornication is pretty hard fucking core. But beyond that, let's move on to the adultery issue, which he's going to quote the verse for and then explain quite reasonably what the punishment is.
for adultery, for a person to zina, confine her in a room and keep her in the room until death takes place.
Yes, lock her in a room until she dies. I'm not even sure if you're supposed to feed and water the person and they die of old age. They may just be supposed to starve to death.
Or something else is ordained for her.
Oh, something else.
So
What
she
would
should
that
be secluded in a room until she dies, or something else is ordained for her.
I really wonder what that something else is. Would you be so bold as to define it for us, sir?
Something else is ordained, you go in the hadith. Hadith says that person who commits adultery should be stoned to death.
There you go.
So based on this, a person who commits adultery, it's hadith of Sahih Bukhari, the Prophet said that anyone who commits adultery should stone her to death, or stone him to death. So an adulterer and adulteress, the punishment is stoning to death. Fornication before marriage, sexual intercourse outside the marriage bonds, is called as fornication, 100 lashes. Hope that answers the question, sister.
You did indeed answer our questions. Now we're moving on to, I believe, the cousins video.
My name is Rahul.
Yes.
I am a telecoms.
If you find this video series, this gentleman here attempts, I'm not sure if he's attempting to troll this man and get him to say some of the more ludicrous things that he thinks, or whether he's an honest believer or attempting to become an honest believer. Either way, his questions are amazing.
Engineer working in Dubai since 2002. I want to ask a few questions. Coming from my background, I think religion is something that following that, you're saved from making, having problems in your life. Yeah. My first question is, I recently read a report by a doctor saying that because of marriages in first cousins in Islam, it leads to a higher probability of the fetuses being born as handicaps. Yeah. It
No, that's impossible.
increases the probability of the babies born without hands or without legs. So if it was something that could potentially cause harm, it should not have been allowed in Islam. And
Imagine that. You mean these old desert people didn't understand basic genetics? Shocking.
another point I would like to add to the same question is, recently I suffered a little bit of a BP, and I went to the doctor, and the first thing he said to me is that stop eating red meat, which is again allowed in Islam. So I would think
It is indeed. From my understanding, a lot of the corner stores in New York no longer sell bacon. They sell something called beef bacon. So pork is bad, but red meat is okay. How interesting. You understood quite a bit about anatomy, didn't you, Allah?
That if these things could be harmful to the human body, these should not have been allowed by who has created us. So if you can clarify me on that.
The brothers asked two questions. The first question that
Technically, in total, I believe he manages to get 6 before they tell him he's got to fuck off.
is talking about consanguineous marriages. Consanguineous marriages means marriage between close relatives. In English, it's called as consanguineous marriages.
Yes, and we stopped that practice quite a while ago for the aforementioned reasons and also because we find it somewhat creepy.
And in consanguineous marriages, medical science tells us today, there are high chances of genetic problems. And I do agree with the brother. So why does Islam permit that?
Good question.
Yes.
It's clearly mentioned in the Quran in Surah Nisa chapter number 4, verse number 22 to 24, the woman who you can marry and the woman who cannot marry is mentioned there. Amongst them, it's clearly mentioned you cannot marry your sister
Well, that's good.
and a lady cannot marry the brother. It's mentioned. Neither the father, neither the mother. You cannot marry the brother of your father, the ladies, and you cannot marry the sister of your father. That means the
Well, congratulations. You laid out the very early understanding. Now, let's get to the more complicated stuff we understand now that your guy couldn't predict.
important close relatives are mentioned in the Quran. Brother, sister cannot marry, son and mother, father and daughter, paternal uncle, maternal uncle can't marry. But as far as first cousins are concerned, Islam does give permission. Now,
Yeah, that's a great idea genetically and has never led to any sort of, bad things at all.
as far as consanguineous marriages are concerned, the maximum problem comes when you marry your direct blood brother and sister.
No shit. I mean, look at this guy's face. Even he looks a little shocked this guy's willing to say, no, go ahead, fuck your first cousins, produce babies, it'll be fine.
Consanguineous marriage. Even if you marry your direct father, daughter, mother and son, or your uncle, the chances are also there if you marry your first cousin, but negligible, very negligible.
Is it though? I've got a video to follow this that might counter that idea.
So
No,
Islam,
that's not what the report said. The report said that because of marriages in first cousins, not your brothers and sisters, it
Let
leads
me-
to this problem.
let
And
me
it
co-
was from a
let-
doctor.
let
It
me
was
complete.
published in Gulf News as well, actually.
brother, let me complete even I am a doctor.
Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah, I think he's trolling. This is the kind of facial expression I catch him giving a couple times where he's so overly respectful, it appears to be simply because he knows if you stroke a man like this' ego, you can get him to say anything.
Fine. Even I am a medical doctor.
Yeah.
It means medical doctor with that doctor.
Yeah.
The chances in direct relatives are very high.
Yeah.
If a sister and brother marry, the chances are very
Why do you keep going back to this? Why don't you answer the young man's question directly?
high.
Yeah.
If a father and daughter are very high.
Everybody knows these things.
You have read only one report, you haven't read the other report.
Yeah.
So you only read Gulf News, I read medical books. So Gulf News is better or medical books is, brother?
Right,
Which
so
is
your
better?
point is marrying in first cousins,
Is
the
lesser-
chances of getting
lesser-
problem is negligible.
It's lesser. It's not non-existent. It's not even really negligible. It's just a little bit less than if you fuck your mother. Well, congratulations. You guys are certainly going to win the genetic lottery that way.
Compared to brother and sister.
As compared to,
Yes,
as compared to,
compared to,
yeah.
yes, compared
But still there is a...
Brother, will you let me complete my answer or?
Sorry, yeah, please.
So you have more faith in Gulf News?
No, not really. I'm here
Huh?
to find
I have more faith in Gulf News than you.
the truth.
Truth, that's right. So what you realize that consanguineous marriage, and I agreed with you. I didn't say it's not there.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to beat around the bush. But compared it is negligible compared to direct blood brother and sister. Now, I do agree that there are medical genetic problems in various ways. But this report is there when you have continuously generation after generation. And our beloved Prophet, that according to Dr. Ahmad Sakari says, the Prophet said, do not marry against first cousins generation after generation. If
there
you do
is
it
hadith,
once or
okay.
twice, it is no problem. Yet, even if you marry not cousins also, you can get a problem. Do you know that?
Well, now he's just going to obfuscate to, diabetes and pancreatic issues and just any disease one can get. So apparently, he's just going to flatten the issue, and that since it's not as bad as mating directly with a sibling or a parent, then it's fine, even though this report exists.
Mohsin has a rare genetic disease which is gradually destroying his body.
And I'm going to pass all this. This isn't even really
Mohsin
what
is
I
obsessed
want
with
to
the
show
idea.
you.
Her sister Zainab is...
These are just sad stories. I want to show you the personal story of our narrator. It'll be brief.
They're almost vertically aligned.
The potential consequences of first cousin marriages are tragic and devastating. My grandparents are first cousins. 5 of their daughters died in childhood, and 3 of my uncles were born deaf.
Yeah, that sounds like great genetics to me. For fuck's sake, man, there is a big problem with 1 or 2 generations of people each having 4 kids and marrying off fucking first cousins. This is a problem.
At the time, no one knew why, because the facts were not known. Today, the medical facts are established, but the practice continues.
Because these people don't believe in science. Now, for our final video, notice the wording here. I didn't adjust any of this. This is how they posted it. Must see. Beautiful lady ask question.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Haya, and I just have one question for you tonight. Islam is a religion of peace and freedom of thought and freedom of speech. So why in the Quran does it say that if a Muslim who is born a Muslim should be punished by death if he chooses not to follow the religion anymore?
Because people that are capable of understanding why one shouldn't be in a religion anymore are capable of potentially convincing others and damaging the whole hierarchical structure of that religion.
Sister, you said the Quran says that a person who's born as a Muslim and he changes his religion, he's put to death. Sister, I don't know of any verse in the Quran.
Now we could let this run. We could. But I think anyone watching this already knows that's bullshit. Let me see. What does that say? Gee, that kinda looks like that, doesn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, the only reason I even made this video is frankly in an attempt to hope that people will wake the fuck up. Wake up, Europe. This is what you've imported. Be very, very careful, because this is what you have imported. And I wish you all luck. I hope you enjoyed this little compilation of crazy fucker talking complete bollocks out of his ass, and I'll be back on Saturday. Goodbye.